So here's a video of a bike build I've done recently on this fella. It's a Surly. It's been a faithful master to its owner who's done about 20,000 miles on it over the course of the last few years commuting in and out of London, and is about to retire down to the West Country, so thought it was time to strip all the bits off, take it, get it sprayed, get that rust sorted out and build up a bike that would be useful to cycle to the pub or to the corner shop, whatever it might be. So first step of course was to get everything off and strip the bike down ready for paint, pack all the bits away, label them up and save them until the bike came back. Sometime later, and with a bunch of new parts as well to do things like a drop bar conversion, the frame is back, the rust is gone, and it's a pretty nice sort of duck egg blue colour. First thing of course is the bottom bracket. Now before you can do a bottom bracket, if you look at the picture on the right hand side there, you can see that it comes back in a pretty bad state, full of paint, full of sand from sandblasting. So you need a tool like this to do something called chasing and facing, which is chasing out the threads to make them clean and facing the actual faces of the bracket shell so that the bracket will fit in nice and smoothly using a tool something like this one. You can see from the picture coming up that it makes quite a difference, and we've now got a nice thread there ready to take the bottom bracket, which is being screwed in as you see in the video below. Great to have a bottom bracket that isn't a press fit. It's so much easier to work on one that screws in and it's tighter and it doesn't squeak as well. I hope one day we'll go back to this as a mass market thing even on carbon frame bikes. Again, another thing with being resprayed is of course you do get sand in everywhere, and some areas need that sand clearing out before you can actually drop anything through them. So what we're doing here is we're just cleaning out the headset, making sure all that sand is out before cleaning it up and getting that headset back in. So the forks going in here, greasing them up and then adjusting them up. There was nothing to change on these forks, they were just the same ones going straight back in. We're going to put a new stem on it eventually, but for the time being I just had the old stem, which would then accept the drop handlebars instead of the flats that were on the bike before. Next, moving on to the chain set. The big ring got replaced, and actually in the fullness of time the medium ring got replaced as well because they were just plain worn out. But we wanted to keep this chain set because it added so much character to the bike. So it got a full rebuild, all the bolts taken off, everything cleaned up, torqued up to the right spec, greased up where it should be, and there we go. Chain set good to go, nice new bottom bracket, should last for a long time. So the bars we changed to drop bars. Now the complication there was being a 9-speed triple, we had to find 9-speed triple shifters to match. Shimano Sora were the only ones that were available to us, but they're good and they're serviceable. Okay, they don't have the gear cables going through the bars, they come out of the side of the shifters, but other than that it's a great set of shifters. So here they are going onto the new handlebars, being lined up using both a ruler and the bench to make sure that the bottom of those levers are about level with the level part of the bottom of the bars. Putting them on now to the new stem. We needed a new stem because the diameter of road bars is different to the diameter of the mountain bike bars that came off. It's important at this stage to make sure that we get them lined up correctly, because of course by the time we've got bar tape on there, then it's a lot harder to move the things around and readjust the bar tape. So good idea to spend a lot of time on it now and get it right. Next part to go on was the front mech. We bought a new front mech just because the old one was too rusted. So it's a bolt-on type because there's no brace-on bracket. So that's a simple case of bolting it on but making sure it's aligned correctly with the crankset. Before we can do anything else to the frame though, of course much like the bottom bracket, all of the parts on the frame that should accept some sort of bolt are full of paint. So a tap and die set is used just to go around each one of those bolt holes and just tap them out, clean them out and make sure that there is a clean No mucking it, no painting it, a nice clean brand new thread apparently in every single one of the areas that we need to screw something onto the bike, including of course the derailleur hanger at the back and all of the mudguard mounts and the frame mounts and the brake mounts and the rack mounts and all of that sort of thing that come on a bike of this type. Last bit of frame prep was, because we have V-brakes on this machine, that we need to get the paint off where the brakes go on, otherwise they're not going to move properly, and in fact they won't even go on, the tolerances are pretty tight here. So just a last bit of prep to sand those off both front and back and get the paint off of the areas that we need to put the brakes onto. Nice to be joined by the dog and the family here. Yeah, she does that. So now the brakes can go back on, ready to take new brake pads and be built up. Next it's cables and something called problem solvers. The problem solvers go into the cables for the brakes here because in our change to road bike handlebars we end up with a short throw to the brake lever, but V-brakes require a long throw. You need to pull a lot more cable through a V-brake to make it work than you do a road brake. So therefore we need a little device to go in instead of the noodle into the brake itself, which acts like a sort of a gear and means that a small amount of effort on the brake, there's one there, going on the front there, see the circular thing? A small amount of effort or a small amount of movement at the brake lever creates a correspondingly larger amount of movement at the brake itself to make sure that the brakes still work efficiently and effectively. Threading the rear cable through the frame here. New inners and new outers. Unfortunately, because of the problem solver, the brake cable that came with the Shimano kit with the shifters was actually too short, so that had to come out, and one of my stock brake cables, which is a bit longer, went back in instead. So quite a bit of adjustment needed here. The other thing that you need to do when you fit these problem solvers, I found out, is that you have to put the brakes in with the maximum amount of spring on them. When you mount a brake caliper, there are 3 little holes which govern how much springiness or resistance there is, and so I had to adjust those to make sure that there was plenty of resistance in there to pull against those problem solvers devices. There's the one on the back. Probably quite a talking point for anybody who sees the bike and doesn't realise what they're for. Come from the States, of course. Next we've got the gear cables going in. You'll notice at this point that there's no rear mech there. That's coming later when I've got the right bar the right tap to actually tap out that last hole. Bar tape going on now. Since we've got the shifters in place, there's no harm in putting the bar tape on. All the cables are there too. We chose a brown bar tape to match with the owner's Brooks saddle and give the bike, a little bit of a retro feel to it. I always like to take quite a bit of time over bar tape and get it right. So the last hole to tap is the rear radio hanger, which on this bike is built into the frame. Had to get a specific tap to do it, hence it wasn't done at the same time as the others. I was waiting for it to come in, but now it's done. We can actually start to finish the bike off almost. New chains going on and being sized to fit the cassette and the chainring. now we've got the rear derailleur in place. We can set the high and the low limits to make sure that the cable doesn't jump off either behind or in front of the cassette, and then start to build up the indexing of the rear derailleur. Bit of extra work that needs to be done there was to free up the cable adjuster which is on that rear derailleur. It had got rusted over time, so it actually had to come off, be stripped down, and fortunately stripping it down, cleaning the rust off, made it serviceable. We had a bit of a curious issue here, so I just wanted to make sure everything was lined up, so I checked that the wheel was in dish, which it was, which was good to know. And also here I'm checking the derailleur hanger to make sure that it's aligned properly. That did need a small adjustment just to make sure that's in line. If that's not in line, you can get some curious changing going on. So now we know that we're dealing with a good wheel and a good derailleur hanger, we can index the gears. Again, an area that's worth spending quite a bit of time on. Time to finish off the cables, cut them to length, put the cable ends on, and that's that pretty much done. The bolts are torqued up, and this is almost the finished article. The owner has got some surly stickers that they're going to put on to replicate the ones that were on there before, but not a complete replacement of all the parts by any means. A bike that was probably feeling pretty unloved and pretty sorry for itself, and not something that one would probably want to ride with a great deal of pride. I'm hoping the owner will now find he's got a quite unique bike that he will enjoy down in Devon in his retirement.